Well, I almost wore my Beatle boots here today, to tell you the truth. Just in homage to those guys. Seeing them on the Ed Sullivan Show was obviously that. And I remember walking into 64 or 65 into a teen dance at my high school. And I Want to Hold Your Hand was on the blaring in the gymnasium, and it was just unbelievable. It was better than the Everly Brothers. It was rocking, great vocals, and it just really lit me up. And after seeing them on the Ed Sullivan Show and hearing them and then learning their music, I started growing my hair, started playing guitar like George, trying to emulate those guys as much as I could. Huge influence, not only on me, but worldwide, I think. Just great.
Yeah, I had been watching, Sammy Davis Jr. and Stevie and Edie and, Vic Damone, those kind of acts on Ed Sullivan. I loved Sammy Davis Jr. But I would try and be like Sammy Davis Jr. But my mother she was, you need to find something to do with your hands. And right about
That's what she thought about you trying to be Sammy Davis Jr.
Yes.
The hands.
Yeah. My parents were, they loved all kinds of music. And but then when the Beatles came along, suddenly because I just started taking guitar lessons, and they were teaching like Down in the Valley, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So a bunch of kids whose mothers were making them take guitar lessons, and I saw the Beatles on there, and I saw this kind of. My parents were both like, "Wait a minute," and I was like, well, "Yeah." What? Suddenly, that changed the whole dynamic, but musically. Suddenly, this is. I don't know what this is, but I got to learn how to play these songs. I quit taking, I'd only taken a couple lessons. I never went back, and I sought out people who would teach me that. And within a few weeks, I won a blue ribbon at the 4-H talent contest singing, I want to hold your hand.
Oh, I thought you meant it was for livestock.
I wasn't. They had a talent contest, and
That's great.
I had a twist of fate put me in Paris just before, the Beatles came for the Ed Sullivan Show. So I was with them up until like 48 hours before that show. And I was so blown away. They had taken me under their wing. They were playing in Paris, and I was on the same bill. And they, being British, they thought I was playing with a French artist. So they thought I was French. And then when they heard me cursing one day, and they came up, John Lennon came up and said, "Hey, you're British," and I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Come up and have a drink with the band afterwards," the band. And from that moment on, they kind of, I guess they thought I was kind of cool. And I hung out with them for 3 weeks and jammed and spent time in the hotel with them, with all those connecting rooms and the whole floor of the hotel. And funniest thing was we used to get back and there's an English dish called bread and butter pudding. And they had the chef of this world famous prestigious hotel. They wanted him to make this bread and butter pudding for them. So this guy would literally come up every night and present the day's bread and butter pudding. And then they go, "Oh, no, not good enough. Tomorrow." And the poor guy would come up every night and do this, and they always send him away like, oh. It was really taking the piss out of the French,
exactly, yeah.
Cuisine.
Yeah.
But it was just wonderful to change my life forever.
Have you seen Ringo or Paul recently? Or?
Yeah, I saw Ringo played some anniversary of his. It was
Birthday.
Birthday, was it?
Yeah.
75th birthday.
70th, I think. 70th.
70th. And I went up and played a song, and Paul stepped out of the crowd unexpectedly.
Wow.
And came up and we jammed. It was great. And I spent quite a long period of time during the 70s with George and played on a track of his, and you know, so yeah, the little thread has always carried on.
I have one little thread that was kind of great. I know it was February the 9th that they came, oh, February the 7th they arrived in America. So that'd be a couple of days after that amazing story, which I just heard for the first time today. But prior to me joining Styx, like Kelly, I'm a new guy. I've only been in it for 15 years. And but prior to that, I had a solo career where in 1984 I got to go to Tittenhurst Park, which was Ringo's house in Ascot, England. And Ringo lived there after John Lennon moved to America. And John Lennon recorded the Imagine album there. So I got to record a full album with Ringo living in that house and hearing all the songs as we were working them up, and use all the same gear, all the same equipment that John recorded Imagine on. And I remember seeing the movie Imagine when it came out in 1980, I think it was 87, so 3 or 4 years later, 87 or 88, and just seeing all the same gear and everything and thinking, the reason I mentioned the date, it was exactly February the 7th that I got to go and start that. It was 1984, 20 years after seeing them on the Ed Sullivan Show. And yeah, so that's my best Beatles story.